I suspected that my husband had a mistress, and for months I played the part of the unsuspecting wife while I waited for the perfect moment to reveal my own secret. My name is Sarah, and for 15 years, I was the silent engine behind my husband's life. While he spent our savings chasing the big idea, I was the one working 12-hour shifts in private equity, building the connections and the capital that kept our world spinning. He saw me as a dependable, perhaps even boring, companion, the woman who handled the taxes while he dreamed of changing the world. For the last 3 years, our home had been less of a sanctuary and more of a frantic headquarters. My husband was obsessed with his new tech venture. He spoke of nothing but scaling, disruption, and market dominance. I watched him transform from a partner into a stranger, a man intoxicated by his own potential. But as his confidence grew, his respect for our marriage withered. It started with the classic signs, the late-night brainstorming sessions, the new password on his laptop, and the cold, distant look in his eyes when I asked how his day went. I didn't need a private investigator. I could smell the expensive perfume on his skin and see the charges for jewelry I never received. He thought he was being clever. He thought I was too suburban to understand the game he was playing. He didn't realize that while he was playing house with a girl half his age, I was the one pulling the strings of the very market he was trying to enter. The climax of his betrayal didn't wait for a special occasion. It arrived on the very Tuesday he finally saw the wire transfer hit his account. It was the day he believed he had finally become a titan. He didn't come home to celebrate with me. Instead, he sent a cold, formal text message telling me to meet him at a rooftop restaurant that overlooked the city, a place where the elite come to see and be seen. When I arrived, he wasn't alone. A young woman sat beside him, draped in silk and dripping with the kind of confidence that comes from being the new woman. My husband looked at me, not with love, but with the cold, clinical gaze of a man terminating a contract. "Sit down, Sarah," he said, skipping the pleasantries. "We need to talk about the future." I sat. I didn't cry. I didn't even look at the girl. I simply unfolded my napkin and signaled the waiter for a glass of the most expensive red on the menu. "I've reached a turning point," he began, leaning forward with a smug grin. "My venture just closed its Series A funding today. An anonymous investment fund moved $5 million into the company account this morning. They took a 60% stake, but they left me as the CEO with total operational control. I am officially a wealthy man, Sarah. And frankly, our lives are no longer compatible." The mistress reached out and covered his hand with hers, her eyes locking onto mine with a predatory gleam. "We think it's best for everyone if you move on," she added, her voice a saccharine trill. "He needs a partner who matches his new status." I took a slow, deliberate sip of my wine. I let the silence hang between us until the smile on my husband's face began to falter. $5 million, I said softly. "That's a lot of money for a company that hasn't turned a profit yet." They saw the vision. He snapped, his ego bruised by my lack of awe. "The fund, this Horizon Capital Group, is legendary for picking winners. They clearly see something in me that you never did." I set my glass down. "I know Horizon Capital very well, Julian. In fact, I'm the one who founded it 5 years ago. I am the sole managing partner. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the sound of a man's world collapsing inward. He blinked, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "What? No, that's impossible," he stammered. "You work in a mid-level finance firm. You're a manager." "I was a manager 10 years ago," I replied calmly. "While you were failing at 3 different startups, I was building a portfolio. I used my family's estate and my own earnings to create a silent investment vehicle. I've been watching your progress for years. I knew your tech was solid, even if your character wasn't." I pulled a thin tablet from my purse and slid a document across the table. "I authorized that $5 million investment this morning," I continued, "but I didn't do it as a wife. I did it as an investor, and as an investor, I protect my assets." If you had bothered to read the secondary clauses in the 60-page contract you signed today, you would have seen the reputational integrity section. The mistress pulled her hand away from his as if he had suddenly become radioactive. "The clause states," I said, my voice cutting through the air like a blade, "that any public behavior by the CEO that brings scandal, moral turpitude, or reputational risk to the firm is grounds for immediate termination with cause. This includes the public display of infidelity during a corporate-funded celebration." I pointed to a small camera lens in the corner of the terrace and then to a table nearby where 2 of my associates were sitting, quietly documenting the scene. "You brought your mistress to a public dinner to humiliate the woman who literally owns 60% of your life," I said. "That is a lapse in judgment so severe that I cannot, in good conscience, allow you to remain as the head of my investment." "You can't fire me," he hissed, his face turning a deep, humiliated red. "It's my company." "It was your company," I corrected him. "Now it's a subsidiary of mine. As of 2 minutes ago, I've activated the clause. You are no longer the CEO. You are an unemployed man with a minority share that you cannot sell for 5 years. Your company car has been flagged for repossession, and your office keycard has already been deactivated." I stood up, adjusting my coat. I looked at the young woman, who was already looking at her phone, likely searching for her next titan. "Enjoy the dinner," I told him. "I've instructed the waiter to put it on your personal card. I've already removed you from the corporate account." I walked away without looking back. As I reached the elevator, I felt a lightness in my chest that had been missing for years. I had invested in his dream, but in the end, I was the one who walked away with the profit. Sometimes, the best way to deal with a man who thinks he's a king is to remind him who actually built the throne.